Hey, this is version control part 2. Last video we made a change to a file inside IntelliJ for the about page, and we looked at rolling that back and throwing our change away, and we looked at the differences that were in our change, and we did a commit of it. And we're going to look at how that commit looks up in the GitHub repository that's in the cloud, and it's going to show why that comment that you make when you check your code in is kind of important. So let's go to GitHub in the cloud and see what's there. So here's my GitHub, and I have 8 repositories here, but the one we care about is this one. Oh, look, I got a new badge. And then College World React, that's the side that we just changed, and I did it about 40 minutes ago, that change. And I'm going to click on it. And it shows all the changes that have been made to this project. And here's the change that was just made. Also, here's some other interesting things about it. So this College World React, that's the part that has a user interface. You can see there's been 215 commits made by CSC270 students to build this thing. And this is the one that we just did. And I think we can click on this here. We're going to talk about this coming up. This is an identifier for the changes that I checked in. Now, I just checked in one file, but I could have checked in, I could have done a submission into GitHub of multiple files, but this was just a single file. I'm going to click on that, and it's really great. It shows me exactly what was changed. So I can use this, for example, to kind of monitor what everybody's doing with the source code repository and the changes they're making. So if I wanted to see what someone did in the last week with the code, I can go look at the check-ins and I can get a feel for, what work's being done on the project and the kind of changes that are being made. Okay, I'm back into the development side of things, and I'm going to make another change. I think what I'll do is I will copy this, put this all here, dump all these names out, and just put me in here. I'm going to show you a different way you can do the check-in. So I think last time the way we did it, we did a right click here, we went under get, we did the rollback, and we did the commit. Well, you might change a couple of files, right? And then you might want to check them all in at once. That happens all the time. You want to check in a set of files. So you go under version control system and you hit the commit. And here is where you have to be really, really careful, because this is the file we changed, right? Well, this is another file that I changed when I was setting my development environment up. And I really don't want this checked in, because if I check this workspace change in, it's going to go out to everybody who kind of pulls down the changes. So I'm going to uncheck this. This is really important. When you go to use this other way, VCS commit, of checking files in, you have to really look at what you're checking in, because you can accidentally check in a wrong file and it's going to mess everybody up. And it happens every single time we have the class. It happens about 10 times. And when you check in a file that you didn't mean to, and you destroy our project's a big deal, because then everybody says, hey, nothing's working anymore. And we'll talk about that later. And this is really, when you go to work for a company, this is really kind of a fear that you might have. At least I did. When you go to do your code check-in, say there's 100 engineers working on a project. Maybe you're new to the company and you're about to do your first check-in. And when you check that code in, everybody else is going to get it. And you really don't want to have destroy the project, because then a bunch of people come storming to your cubicle saying, what did you check in? Why is nothing working? Okay, so anyway, you check the files you're about to check in, and then you make a comment. I added the name Alan to about. This is just as it was before. Let's do this commit and push. Let's see how it goes this time. It was a little weird last time. And so that just, There it goes. And you have to do this second step, this push step, not just the commit step. This is the thing that's actually pushing it up into the cloud. This is important. And, especially when you start to work on the project, go up into GitHub to see that you see your change in GitHub, because what will happen is sometimes people in the class will say that there it shows the commit. Sometimes people in the class will say, well, I made the change, and then they hit the commit, but they didn't do the push part of it, so it didn't make it up to the cloud, so I can't see the code when I go to pull it down. When you go to, as the people change code, what you have to be thinking about is, before you go to start to work on the code, what you should do is hit update project. And when you do this, it's going to pull down any changes that anybody else made on the project. I'm going to hit it, and I shouldn't get anything because I just checked in that one change, but I'll just hit it. You take the default choice there. It's going to take any changes that are out in the branch up in GitHub, and it's going to pull it in. So it says fetching down below here, but now it's saying all files are up to date. But if somebody had checked a file, it would pull it down. So what this sort of means is, this is how I do it, and you can kind of use your own rules, but if I'm about to work on doing some new feature or making some sort of change, I will typically do that update command to pull down all the changes that people made on the project, and then I'll try out the project to make sure it's all working, and then I'll start to make my change. So I'm kind of making my code base that I have here all up to date before changing it. I think that's the best strategy. Another strategy is you don't update your project and you just make your changes and you push them. But that kind of gets into this issue of your file wasn't up to date and somebody else changed it since you pulled the code, and then the code has to be merged. And sometimes it'll come back and it will say, hey, you got to merge this. I don't know what the heck to do to get your code in there. So if you kind of update the project before you begin, that gets around that issue. And we're going to kind of play around with this in class together on a day where we're going to add our names to the about. But you're going to see this as you work on the course, where you're going to have issues with pulling the changes down, and you'll pick up some code that doesn't work because somebody checked something bad in, or you go to push something up and it pops up this confusing interface that says, I don't know how to push your changes up because you have to merge it. All this stuff is really great because you know what you're doing when you do this stuff? You're doing software engineering. You're figuring out how version control works. And so when you get out there and you have some job and you're working with others and you hit all this stuff about version control, you're going to have something in your back pocket about, you'll have some recollection about, hey, yeah, we did this in that software engineering class, and I sort of remember this a teeny bit. So hopefully it will help. So that's part 2 of version control. And I think there's going to be another video after this. We're going to kind of go into some nitty-gritty details about how GitHub works.